Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And on the program, it's another one of our All Things Canada episodes, and I'm so excited to have on the program first-time guest Jasmine Peardon, who is a political science student at a university or college in Montreal, I believe. She's a leftist who is part of the campaign team for Yves, the brilliant, outspoken Canadian historian, media critic, NGO critic, anti-imperialist thinker, and activist, as well as journalist and member of Canadian Foreign Policy Institute and Disruption Canada, who's a frequent guest and good friend of the show. And she's part of the E for NDP Leader, which you can check out at e4ntpleader.ca in case people are interested. And yeah, we'll be discussing the policies advocated by the team and how the insurgent underdog campaign is faring to try to overturn the decision to block E from running in the leadership race formally. Before we do that, just a reminder to our audience, please share widely all of One Plus One's content, past and present episodes, our playlist, and help us overcome the far-right algorithms and the dominant monopoly Western corporate state media and pseudo-leftist websites have in the social media world by sharing our content. Share us across social media and email. Please donate if you can to One Plus One at our PayPal. If people are having troubles and would like an alternative form of payment, just email me at yurismatter@gmail. And sometimes Facebook blocks me from the ability to share One Plus One. So again, please share widely. It helps the show immensely, and it's our only way of overcoming colonial, pro-imperialist, sexist, heteronormative, and racist media. And now let's get underway. So first of all, Jasmine, welcome to the program. Happy New Year, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
It's a real honor to have you on. And my first question I wanted to ask you is, firstly, feel free to even talk more about your background if you fancy, and then afterwards talk about how you discovered Eve and how you joined the his campaign, and what's it been like working with I believe you worked with 40 others who were involved in coming up with the party platform proposal, the manifesto. Capitalism can be fixed onwards to a socialist future. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I live in Montreal and right now I'm pursuing my master's in political science and I did my bachelor's at UBC in Vancouver. I started in 2016, so it's a few years ago. And in between, I worked with the federal government in public policy. And it was a pretty relaxed job, so I had a lot of time for reading. And then also with like COVID and everything. So that's when like my kind of radicalization really started. And I just started reading a lot more. And I also traveled kind of like 2 years nonstop during my bachelor's as well. So that was a formative experience as well. And then, yeah, with Eve, I think I was like in the library in Montreal looking for a book on the Canadian military, and I came across his.
Oh
And
wow,
yeah,
interesting.
and yeah, and then I was talking with a friend, and I was like, "Oh, do you want to do a book club with this book? Like, I think it'll be super interesting for both of us." So yeah, we like, read his book and then I kind of was hooked because it's hard to get a Canadian perspective sometimes. We're always like given the American perspective. So just hearing all the details about Canada, I was absolutely hooked. And then I would see him around, like there was like anti-NATO protests here in Montreal, and he like would speak at that. I also actually saw him at the library like many times because he's like often there. So
Oh
before this
wow.
campaign, like I introduced myself to him. I was like, I read all your books, and I go to the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour. He's like, awesome. um, but then, yeah, I heard on the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour that he was looking for volunteers and for the policy committee. And I was like, oh, this is 100% like exactly what I want to do with my free time. I just felt like it was so important. And I was so shocked as well because I wasn't super interested in like going into politics at all. But I was like, under Eve, like I would. Like that's very important. And I want to be a part of it. So yeah, I sent an email to Barry of like Socialist Action and the
Yeah.
Socialist Caucus and NDP. And yeah, I just showed up on a Zoom call one day with like 40 other people I didn't know at all. And we just started talking policy right from the start. So yeah, it's a great experience.
Wow, that's brilliant. And then what was it like to when coming up with the policy proposals, the advocacy, what was that like working with the 40 other, kind of like-minded like-minded leftists because I believe you said you were quite surprised because you sort of felt I believe you said like in one press conference or one meeting that you felt first a little bit like intimidated because you thought that these people must be so much more, bigger policy wonks and leftists than I am. But actually, well, I mean, it wasn't that way. You were quite surprised, like how welcoming people were and how much of like your input people actually cared about, and how just like very like democratic and just grassroots it all was, especially when asking for Eve's input and him being quite like encouraging, like saying like, yeah, no, this is great and whatnot, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, definitely a lot of the people in the policy committee have way more experience than I. I mean, these are people who have been studying politics since they were, started their bachelor's in university and now they're in their 60s. They lead like leftist groups in Canada. They just have so much knowledge and experience. I had no idea who any of them were, and there's also like younger people as well, but I had no idea who any of them were except for like I've kind of recognized some faces from webinars, but I wasn't really like keeping track of who people were. So yeah, it was a great experience. Like it definitely was intimidating, but we just started out with discussing like the values of the campaign and like the big topics. So like immigration or like Indigenous issues in Canada, and then broke off into subcommittees. And my contract had just expired like a few months prior. So I was like laid off. I had so much time. So out of like seven committees, I think I signed up for like four or five, and everybody normally just did one. I mean, I didn't know. Um, so I just went like full head into it and did a lot of research. Yeah, it was a great experience. I definitely realized I have a lot of blind spots with domestic policy, like when I was getting into it. So that was like so much research there. And then like realizing, okay, from following Eve and being really interested in foreign policy, like the foreign policy committee was like a breeze. Like we actually had like, there was like no debates or anything. Like it was just like we all knew exactly what we wanted to say. There was like some words which we were kind of stuck on, but the foreign policy committee, I think we met like once and just like we all just knew what we wanted to say.
And that's actually kind of hilarious given that some of the people who are very dismissive of Eve's campaign think like, oh, Eve is just a foreign policy guy. Like he's not going to talk so much about what's going on with Canadians domestically, and that's what Canadians really care about. And like having actually read from beginning till end like the policy platform, I remember like the night before I was supposed to interview Barry and Eve dropped by, and then I remember just reading the policy platform, and I was just blown away how great the socioeconomic domestic stuff was. And it's just like one of those things where like, geez, do people even like actually like read when they before they make like whatever criticisms and so forth? So, and and it's great. Like I remember, like I told Barry, I said to him that like having read like the entire like like manifesto, I felt kind of like what Anaran Bevan, who was the guy who helped create the NHS in England, and he said about when they were done like creating the legislation for it, he said it's a fine piece of socialism, and that's what I felt when reading the party platform. That like, wow, this is amazing socialism right there. So yeah, but that's a perfect segue then to this question, which is, what are three policy proposals in the platform on Canadian socioeconomic domestic policies that you're particularly proud of and think audiences, certainly leftist a leftist audience should look more into when if you were to be invited on the CBC or any platform, plugging Eve for NDP leader, and yeah, curious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like the foreign policy section of our document obviously gets the most traction. That's Eve's specialty, and there's just so much going on right now. I mean, Venezuela, Gaza, the United States, just everything. So that I feel like has been discussed quite a bit. So I won't touch on those ones, but I do think they're super important. But I really like one section of the platform that I really worked on was it's kind of meta, but it's like universal basic services. Because at first we had UBI, so like universal basic income.
Hmm.
Um, but I had just thought about universal basic income a lot before and done research into it. And then when this came up again in the policy platform, I spent a lot of time actually trying to educate people on my perspective, which is that universal basic services are a lot better than universal basic income because with
Okay.
services, there's no like stigma. So like, when we're sick now, we just go to the hospital. That's it. It's in everybody's interest to go and get it. But if you're like on food stamps or you're getting like welfare payments, there's a lot of stigma with accepting that aid, and I think that UBI would have that same stigma behind it. And then yeah, it's just in everybody's interest to have these public services. So that was a big part of the platform that shifted like an entire section. So yeah, that's one thing that like I don't feel like people are talking about that much, but it would, fundamentally change every Canadian's life because like, we
Expand a
have
bit more than what you mean by universal basic services, then.
yeah, I mean, so like having water as a public service, having education, like we already have like elementary school, high school, but free university or having childcare that's free. So like these services that are offered to you. Yeah, I think that is something that like really would change the. Oh yeah, also elder care, having an elder care system rather than it being for profit. So yeah, there's these ways to get rid of the stigma, get everybody to benefit from it, and then provide like a good service of high quality with good paying jobs behind it. So that's definitely like one aspect. Another one is probably the digital sovereignty section. Not a lot of people discuss that one either. I feel like maybe it's not super clear in the manifesto, but we really have a strong like digital sovereignty perspective. And essentially what it is recognizing that we're like, we can't just, I don't know, keep using these American platforms and expect that we can reform them a little bit and try to regulate them a little bit. Like we
You
just
talk
need to
about
have,
like Silicon Valley, the internet, the
yeah,
Googles,
exactly.
the Elon Musks of the world because he owns X and whatnot, and yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube and whatnot.
Exactly. And if we had like our own platforms that we used, but what's really important in that and what our document highlights is giving people the education and the tools in order to create these software and platforms themselves. Because right now we're just kind of users in this whole experience because
Yeah.
everything is so convenient and easy and we're not really given the skills or the tools to like adjust. We just prefer having this like packaged product come to us. But if it's integrated into the educational system from, when you're a child and you go throughout your education and you learn how to use these products more than just a user and actually like a builder, then, we're setting ourselves up for an actual sovereign future where we can own the products that we use.
Oh, interesting. That's yeah. That yes, that is very interesting. And then anything else you think that you think that gets a bit overlooked?
Yeah, and then definitely the decolonization section. That's just way overdue in Canada. And we did extensive consultation there. And it's something that, like, I think everything can be improved, but this section, like, I'm really proud of. And I think that our whole team is really proud of it. So, like, for example, free, prior, and informed consent on Indigenous lands is very important in Canada. And that's something that we had in our platform. after doing consultation, Indigenous are saying that's not enough. There's like it's not working because it's, coerced or like it's just not working. So we just need to freeze all production on Indigenous lands, all industry, everything. And so that's just like that's something that, not everybody in our platform was aware of. And through like extensive consultation, it's a position that we decided to put into our platform because we think it's super important. And yeah, I mean, we have other aspects like land defenders in Canada, that are facing trial charges, are in prison or in jail, um, suspending all of that, immediately releasing them and dropping the charges. And that's like, who's calling for that? Like,
Exactly.
yeah, there's so many aspects of our platform that are just, giving back Indigenous communities what is rightfully theirs and that has been taken from them. And that's just very, very important.
Talk a bit more about what the campaign's advocating in terms of how to address some of the very yeah, some of the many legitimate grievances that Indigenous people have. Like what are some things that the campaign is advocating which would help Indigenous people just yeah, overnight, if allowed to, of course, be implemented and whatnot.
Yeah, so we have a land back policy. We don't specify exactly how much to who, when. We went through it like over and over again. We put up numbers, but it's just like you can't really put a number to this, especially you don't know who it goes towards. Like we spent like an hour talking about like the word we're going to use for like indigenous. Is it indigenous leader? Is it hereditary chief? Is it the band council? Is it like who? Like how do we even quantify that? Because the band councils are who the Canadian federal government often negotiates with for Indigenous nations in Canada. But Indigenous nations and leaders say that the band councils are corrupt. But that's who the Canadian federal government typically prefers to negotiate with. So it's not easy to quantify or specify the land back policy, but it's putting it in there and saying that this is what we want, this is what we're working towards, and just opening that door for conversation is super important. So yeah, we have pursue land negotiations, police reform and judiciary reform, super important in Canada. Our prison system is overrepresented with Indigenous peoples. Um, so focusing on different types of, instead of punishment, it's more like restorative justice, trying to think about the future rather than just trying to punish and actually like rehabilitate our society. And yeah, same on that like rehabilitation line, incorporating land-based learning for non-Indigenous students, teaching about the residential school in classes in elementary schools. Because yeah, even like for myself, I mean, I grew up on the West Coast and there's a lot of First Nations there. Even like the name of the city where I'm from is an Indigenous name, and we didn't research we didn't talk about residential schools and
Oh
like
wow.
in yeah. So it's something that's like maybe I think if you went to school now, maybe it would be different
Mm.
because like every year, we're kind of reckoning with our past, but it's still not legitimate. It's still not talked about properly. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and other things that also get overlooked is also like the '60s scoop. I've interviewed knockasets of the Montreal women's Indigenous women's shelter and so forth, and then yeah, and then to think, I mean, there's even the rise of of residential school denialism, minimalism, and it comes out from awful it's like the National Post and so forth like that. So yeah, no, very important. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think like That's one aspect, like this is also personal as well, with the Indigenous part of Canada, is like it's not only that it's hidden and not talked about and a bit taboo on certain aspects of it, but also there's like a personal reckoning that I think a lot of people are having within themselves. So, like you mentioned, the 60s scoop. My grandmother is fully Indigenous and was adopted when she was born, and she grew up in a white family. And so I'm technically like, yeah, a quarter Indigenous, but it's not something I ever recognized until I got a bit older, like the last few years. And I'm thinking like, because my grandmother met her birth parents, and I'm like starting to put this together. But because like I always knew her as having white parents, and she was never connected to that history, therefore I was never connected to that history. And I
Wow.
don't really identify with it. But like that's that, it's not just that it's like a top down system, but it's also that like a lot of people just don't know their history because they were pulled out of it from the 60s scoop, or just the lasting effects of the residential schools that now, like, you have people like me where I just have no connection.
Wow, unbelievable. And it's also, people still get shocked about this, but like I think the US, their quasi last residential school, like I think was closed sometime in the 1970s or 80s, whereas Canada, its last residential schools was in, effing 1996 and so forth. So, and yeah, and there's long way to go. Canada still has a long way to go, even though I think that they're much better at recognizing the past and not and certainly the left in Canada I think is much better at at addressing the plight of Indigenous people compared to the U.S. And then when you compare it to like Australia, it's just like unbelievable, like the genocide, denialism, and the viciousness that comes with the racism. So yeah, no, so it is very important. Yeah, no, I did not know that about your background. So thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then um, sort of, well, actually, yeah, this is a bit related. I mean, I would hate to change the subject, but I think it is sort of related, which is the issue of housing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, talk to us. Can you talk to us about the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis, and people, largely young people, but I think it's people of all ages who may not even want to, own a home or apartment, but even something like rents are astronomically high. And when reading the manifesto policy proposals, there's calls to make the housing crisis a national emergency and advocating of what's called rent-geared income for people in both apartments and houses. Can you talk to us about that, please? And I know a past guest of mine and several others, Ivan and several comrades who are running for mayor in various local governments in I believe Kingston, Ontario, they were advocating for rent-geared income. I believe the Communist Party of Canada has also been advocating for that. So yeah, so do talk to us more about the housing crisis, making it into a national emergency, and then pushing for rent-geared income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, housing in Canada is just insane, especially in BC, where I'm from. So I lived in Vancouver for 6 years, and it's just insanely expensive. Um, Like I think for one place in like 2000, I don't know, maybe 18, like I was paying 1,500 for a room, like 1,500 Canadian. It's just so expensive. Um, and now like it's already, I mean, I go back and visit my friends and they're like, "Oh yeah, I have a good deal. It's only like 2,800 for a one bedroom." And I'm like, "Ish." So it's just, yeah, it's crazy. Like, and the crazy thing too is that like Vancouver wages are not high. Whereas Toronto, like they're a little bit higher, but it's still not affordable. But like the wages are super low. And so I just like I don't know how people afford it. I mean, a lot of the times people just move in with their partner after like 6 months or so, just because it's so expensive. And that's one thing I noticed from moving to Montreal is I've just find it's cheaper here. So I find that a lot people have a lot more time. Like when I've lived here, I only ever worked one job. But in Vancouver, I was always working two, like always, always, always working two jobs. And I felt like everybody around me was as well. And yeah, when I moved to Montreal, there's just a lot more culture. And directly tied to housing because here, when you have a lease for an apartment, you don't have to give up your lease to the landlord after. You can assign it to somebody else. So it maintains the same rent. So they can only increase it what
Ah,
the
okay.
yeah. So they can only increase it what the rental board allows each year, which is, sometimes 0.5%, sometimes it's 2%. Last year it was 6%. So it's already going up a lot. But unfortunately, the provincial government just got rid of that law maybe a year ago. So now rents can no longer be reassigned. And we've already seen the impact in Montreal. I mean, rents have gone up like crazy here.
And that
Um,
and homelessness, which is a big problem in Canada amongst all races, and of course, very high amongst Indigenous people, but a huge, I believe Dimitri Lascaris and others have talked about how there's a huge homelessness crisis in Canada, which isn't covered that much. And under Justin Trudeau, there was lots of evictions of like encampments and so forth of homeless encampments. So and is that becoming more visible in Quebec now with the rise of rents and the deregulation of rent controls and whatnot?
I mean, like I personally think so, but it's also hard to say. I've only been in Montreal for 3 years. But I mean, compared to Vancouver, I moved here and I genuinely thought there was no homeless people here when I first moved here. Like I was just shocked. I was like, and now I kind of know the areas of the city where there are like a couple that kind of are like in that area, but it's also a different like there's different weather here. It's like much harder to be outside in negative 40-degree weather like throughout the winter. Whereas in the summer there is like a bike path that often has lots of tents on it and everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll speak about BC because that's where I know more intimately. But it is truly like so shocking, and it's become so normalized. Like my hometown on Vancouver Island, we had like three homeless people growing up, and we knew them. We knew their families. We knew their names. We knew why they were on the street. It's like mental illness. People would check up on them. Now I go home and I'm just like, what is going on? And like, it's shocking, and it's like become so normalized, even in a small town of like 12,000 people. Like it's really crazy. Um, so yeah, it's really sad, and I like it's gotten to the point now where when I go somewhere and they don't have homeless people, it's actually quite noticeable for me because it's
Wow.
just so normalized. I'm like, there was like barely any homeless people. So yeah, I think that's like the number one issue in Canada is homeless people, and I mean you'll see a lot of people on drugs too if you come here when you're downtown because yeah, it's become very open and loud in certain areas. Yeah, it's quite sad.
and and then talked about uh yeah and then talk about what rent to geared income means and why that would be a very important thing in terms of dealing with yeah the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, like we can't be paying 60% of your income towards your rent. I mean, these like there needs to be some sort of metric. So yeah, that's essentially what it is. Like it needs to be adequate, appropriate for how much you're making.
And then so how would that happen? So if somebody say they work for I think Tim Hortons is sort of like you guys as McDonald's, right? Or yeah, so a worker at Tim Hortons, or even somebody that works at like say H&M or something like that, like
Mhm.
I mean, I wouldn't know how much those those people get paid, but then however much they get paid, like how much of their income would then go to a rent, which would be controlled. It would be a set price, and it wouldn't be. Yeah, you can explain it better.
Actually, I can't explain it better because the housing committee is separate from the policy committee. So
Okay,
they're the ones that are leading the charge on this, and I haven't joined them. So yeah, I'd have to ask them.
okay, so folks, check out the
Yeah.
check out the policy proposal on that. And then talk to us about how so many of the issues that plague the working class and the precarious middle class Canadians and other vulnerable and marginalized groups is being squandered by Canada's membership in NATO, NORAD, its non-peacekeeping, which is actually warmongering, and that's spending 2% of your GDP, now 5%, which is what the liberal government of Mark Carney is trying to accomplish. If you were to spend just 2% of GDP or even 5% of GDP, you can accomplish eliminating indigenous poverty. You can merge the largely private mental health care industry and you mentioned in the previous answer elder care into a single payer healthcare system that includes dental and eye care, and invest much of that money into a vast education health system and even publicly owned public transportations at a very low cost, and of course taking the profit out of the real estate agencies. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you shocked at how people are so uh how people don't even connect that if you just spent 2% of GDP, you could have all of that, and yet people don't ever seem to want to articulate that. But spending 2 to 5% on militarism, yeah, that's just fine. I'm very curious your response to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Very logical people who are smart, intelligent, educated, when they hear that we're ramping up military spending, they're happy and they're proud. And there's really not an understanding of what our military does in Canada, what it serves, and that it does nothing for our sovereignty. Like, because as Canadians, it's always, we're not Americans, and we really differentiate ourselves as that. And so when we ramp up military spending, it's all about sovereignty. And oh, we're protecting ourselves from the US, elbows up with Mark Carney. We need to do this to protect our borders. Russia is going to get us from the north. The US is going to get us from the south. And it's just like, okay, that maybe could make sense if our military didn't function the way it does, but it's not set up that way. And like the equipment that we're buying, like it just doesn't add up. But that extra step is like a step that, we're not given, we're not told about, and it's kind of a slog to read through. So nobody really goes into it, you know? And I find that's like one of the hardest. I mean, and the military and China are, I think, are probably the two biggest issues that Canadians have at the moment, where there's just a disconnect with the reality because there's so much propaganda and just like psyops essentially on these two issues, and they go hand in hand, of course. But yeah, the military spending is just so absurd. It's really hard to. I mean, I know lots of people in the military, so it also is difficult then because I'm like, no, I'm not trying to take your job. I'm just saying like there's way better jobs and you shouldn't have to, be forced to go into this industry of death that, serves nothing except imperialism. So yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, and no, and I mean, it's just so ridiculous that people think that okay, we need to spend more on the military, yet that means buying more F-35 fighter jets, which comes from an American company called Lockheed Martin, and we're spending 5% of our GDP to protect us from Donald Trump in the United States, even though we're
Yeah.
spending it on NATO, which is a military alliance with the U.S., and so much of the Canadian military is trained by the United States and so forth, and so it's a racket. It's just a huge racket. It's just unbelievable that more leftists aren't articulating that. And
Yeah.
then that's actually a perfect segue to this question, which I gotta ask. I have to ask: have you been stunned by a lot of the hostility and vile pushback Yves has received from other leftists, people who are left leaning and have a huge following? Many from small to big, supposedly in the nonprofit media, who have either ignored Yves' campaign and the platform, or have just been hostile? And if the answer is you're not surprised, then do explain why.
Yeah, it's been interesting as somebody who just read. I didn't know any of these people before starting this campaign. So it's been like a meet your heroes moment, but also like a kill your heroes moment. Because it's
Oh,
just been
yo, wow, yeah, I can imagine.
like, I like you taught me to think this way. Like I've read your books, I listened to your podcast, I listened to your interviews. Like I think this way because of you, yet you're not on board. Like like you're attacking this campaign, you're not talking about our policies. I mean, it's been, yeah, that's been difficult. I think it was difficult at first. Now I think I guess it was just like I guess I was just kind of naive. I thought like, we're all leftists. Like at the beginning of the campaign, I remember I was handing out leaflets for Yves' campaign here in Montreal, and somebody asked me, "Oh, but what about Abby?" And I said, "Abby's great. Yeah, like it's going to be great. I think that our campaign will maybe we'll join forces later on. We have a lot of the same ideas." And that was the energy at the beginning of the campaign was, we weren't talking with them, but it was we're fighting the same battle and we want the same things. So I mean, the yeah, for Abby to turn away from our campaign and to denounce us, I think was really hard. Especially when, Bianca, the campaign manager, it was the co-founder of the Leap that Abby kind of ran with. And so I think it's been kind of heartbreaking for her as well. And so that's like the politics side. And then, yeah, like I said, with, you know, Nora Loretto, I still really like Nora Loretto, but disappointed with her reaction to the campaign. So yeah,
But out of curiosity, she's actually been a past guest on this show a couple of times. But what has actually been her response or even non-response? Because
yeah,
because there are two things. There are the people who are just hostile towards Eve, and that's and that's shocking in and of itself. And then there are just people who just don't even cover,
yeah.
yeah, who just don't even who just don't even cover like what the policy proposals are and whatnot. But what was Miss Loretto's response?
Yeah, so she didn't say anything for the longest time. Never covered it. It's obviously all over her Twitter feed. I mean, like we interact with the same people. It's all over my feed. I'm sure that she had heard about, she was talking about like months ago, she was talking about, oh, we need to save the NDP. Can it be saved, reformed? So she knows what was going on, and we dropped this policy book, nothing, no discussion of the policies. Like she literally informed so much of my positions contributing to this policy book, and she doesn't even speak on it. Like, say that you don't like Eve, sure, whatever, but talk about the movement, talk about, okay, I'm not going to say his name if you don't like him, but this policy book is super good and you guys should go read it. Or here are my critiques of it in order to make it better, because I'm sure she has critiques, That's great. Tell us, we'll fix it. Like, if there's a good argument to be made, we're not like hostile. But no, she ended up doing like a couple tweets saying, I waited a long time to talk about this. But I don't think that Eve is. This is not verbatim, but I don't think that Eve is like a good leader, and you guys didn't approach it the right way. You should have done a more distributed way to do it. She was like, you can't just jump into the leadership race and just try out of nowhere. You need to go to like your local EDAs and get people going through there, and then build up and up and up to have this like ground up movement. And I understand that. That totally makes sense. But like you got to start
Wow.
somewhere. Like there's a leadership race and there's a genocide going on, Like I'm sorry it's not great timing. Maybe we should have built this up, but like Eve's fairly young for politics. Like we're just starting. Like
Wow, that's hearing that for the first time. That yeah, that is, yeah. Wow. That is shocking and quite sobering. And but yeah, no, but What surprises me a bit is that here you have the NDP Socialist Caucus and Socialist Action Canada. These are, the people who really try their best to fight for socialist policies, advocate for socialist policies, and trying to influence the NDP to be the socialist party we wanted to be at home, anti-imperialist party we wanted to be overseas, and I'll admit I was surprised when it was the NDP Socialist Caucus that recruited Yves for NDP leadership. It was even pleasantly surprised, and Yves said that yeah, I will try to run for the NDP leadership and try to influence the race, the party, and so forth like that. So then when you have other people, other leftists, prominent leftists, again with huge followings and whatnot, who are also the type of people who always complain about the NDP and complain that the NDP isn't left enough, or complain that the NDP should be more aggressive towards against the Liberal Party, yada yada yada. And then and I don't know, see, just seeing them just seeing a lot of those people attack Yves, or just not even reports on the campaign, and even just talking positively about some of the policy proposals and so forth. That's just shocking, and then it just goes to show you just how out of step I guess some of them are, given that you know NDP Socialist Caucus supports Yves and recruited him in Socialist Action Canada. So yeah, that's just yeah,
Yeah. Something
shocking.
that something that somebody brought up in one of our general meetings for the campaign, which I never thought about, but they said, remember that Eve is the only candidate that was nominated, while the rest were self-nominated. And I thought that was a very good point because everybody's saying, oh, Eve's only doing this to sell books. He's a grifter, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Eve is the only one of you guys that is actually nominated through the Socialist Caucus, while as the rest of you have just decided to become leader, you know? And I'm like, that's a really good point.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And that's a perfect segue to this question, which is right now, the campaign that you're a part of is trying to overturn this wrongful decision by the NTP's three unelected person vetting committee that rejected Yves' bid to run for the leadership contest. Now, if these efforts aren't successful, who would you support for in the NDP leadership contest? Who would be your first, second, and third choice? And what's been your assessment of even some of the other what's been your assessment of some of the other candidates in their leadership bid?
Yeah, so when do you plan on posting this?
Tomorrow, most likely, or even sometime tonight.
Um, yeah, so there's discussion about Bianca becoming a candidate. Um, yeah.
Okay. Oh, so this is a scoop then. Okay. All
Um,
right. Interesting.
yeah, so that I would stand behind Bianca. She brought it up with the whole campaign on a general meeting, maybe before Christmas, I think, as we're trying to figure out next steps. And she, she brought it up just to see what everybody's reaction would be and said, maybe this is something I would consider. But she has, her and Eve have two kids, and she's the mom. So it would be, she said it would be a big sacrifice, for the movement if I did this. So she kind of said it offhandedly and then just wanted to throw it out there. And the rest of the call for an hour and a half was person after person endorsing her. And it was honestly it was beautiful. It was I think there must have been 20 or 25 speakers, volunteers that said, you know what, Bianca, I would 100% stand behind you. You've been so principled. You're so knowledgeable. You're very personable. This can't, we stand behind you. And so, yeah, I mean, if that ends up happening, 100% I would stand behind Bianca. I mean, I think she is so competent. She's very compassionate. She's very personable. I think she has that leadership quality that is really important. Yeah, so she would be a pick. There's other people in the campaign that, I would stand behind as well, but I think she's my number one. But it is kind of like a movement where over time, I think if this continues, more people that are just kind of volunteers right now would have the confidence to stand up and to yeah, take up a political position or run for a political position. So I can't necessarily say who they are right now, but yeah, there's been a lot of work between all of us. So
Well, now obviously you can speak for the rest of the campaign, or the NDP Socialist Caucus / Socialist Action Canada. I'm very curious to see, who they would reluctantly endorse or wholeheartedly, endorse for leadership if Yves is just permanently blocked. But the folks who are running, Heather McPherson, Avi Lewis, Tony Quells, he's the farmer, and then there's Rob Ashton, and then there's uh,
Tennille,
yeah, and I'm blanking on the woman's name, but what's
Tennille.
yeah. So would you ever endorse any of them as like a second choice or third choice? Yeah, I'm very curious. Yeah, very curious why, or even why not.
Mhm. Yeah, so I did sign Tennille and Tony's nomination because they need to get 500 signatures in order to be a candidate at the beginning, and I signed both of theirs. Um, would they be my top choice? Absolutely not. I I just think that it's important to have their voices. I really like everything that Tony says, the farmer. I don't think that I don't think he's got it enough, but I think he's saying the right things, So I support his movement. I support his voice. But he's also quite old. So yeah. Um, with Tennille, she's Indigenous. She's from just the town next to me. So I did know her name before this as well. Um, she's been decent on like some issues. She's definitely like more liberal than me. But again, like I think it's super important that her voice is included. So I've supported her campaign. And then it's kind of to the like top three for most people, like the more popular. Um, I'll just start with Heather. I don't support her campaign at all. Um, she is a liberal. Um, I think she's incredible at how much of a politician she is.
Yeah.
Just every answer she gives, even in person. I talked to her at like the meet and greet here. Like she's on it, she doesn't mess up. Like
Okay. Interesting.
she, she's very like politician. Like she doesn't ever say anything wrong. She does her like no comment. She has no desire to like bump it, like interject her voice into things. Like she's very much a politician. But yeah, her politics don't represent me at all. Um, and Rob is super interesting. I've been diving into him more. Interesting in a negative way. Let me kind of
Okay.
clarify.
Do tell. Do
Um,
tell.
so at first when I heard him, I was like, whoa, workers, whoa, kind of a bit of Marxist language going on here. I was like, what is this? He was working for a union. I was super intrigued. And then, the second time I hear him speak, I'm kind of like, okay, we're really going with this workers language. Like you're really going heavy on this. The third time I'm like, it's kind of cringe. Like it's kind of embarrassing how much he like fits in workers to like literally every single sentence. It's like a gimmick almost. And um, I started doing some research on him over the break just because I had a bit more time over Christmas. And I found these two YouTube videos from 10 years ago on a YouTube account called Working with Coal, like the fossil fuel. And he's essentially shilling for the coal industry. And it really clicked everything for me because he's a union representative for the dock workers, for a
Yeah.
lot of dock workers in Canada, and docks on the west coast handle fossil fuels, right? And there was a point in Oregon and in Washington State, coal export facilities are banned now. So if you're in like Montana or these Northern American states, you can't get your coal to Asia through your own Western states. So they often come up to Vancouver. And so there was a proposal for Vancouver like 10, 15 years ago to expand the coal export facilities. Vancouver Port, or like I think it's like Fraser Port or something like that, was considering it, and that was the time when Rob made these videos for working with coal. So there was a lot of public outcry against these export facilities because of coal dust that is going to be coming through the city and through communities, through Indigenous communities. And so in this video, he's saying coal dust has never been a problem for my employees. As a union, we've never seen any issues with it. We would know because we would have workers' compensation issues, like claims. And that really shows that he is for the industry workers, but not for the community, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's very much like focused, and then the next video he's saying, you know, coal brings good high paying jobs. He says, I personally have had a one income household because of coal. My like wife hasn't had to work, and it's a really good job. So you know, we should open up these facilities or whatever. And again, it really shows his language today, his experience, because he's very much focused on like good jobs kind of no matter the environmental effects. And there was a point at the beginning of his campaign where discussion of a pipeline came up, and he kind of was pro pipeline for this really controversial pipeline. And then he kind of like backtracked it and said, like, you know, mainstream media will say anything. As usual, the headlines are wrong. You know, I stand with communities and whatever. But it kind of is telling to me that he has this perspective of, you know, like go baby go, like Canada first sort of perspective where like as long as they say yes, it's fine. But like, you know, what is the coal exported to Asia doing for, you know, greenhouse gas emissions for the planet? You know, like we need a little bit more broader of a perspective. So that's kind of what I've been thinking most
Interesting.
recently.
And of course the last one, Avi Lewis. I know that there's been an ongoing feud that's been going on between Yves and one of Avi's campaign managers, Martin Lukash of the Breach, and there has been a lot of friction going on be, 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 between the team of Yves and Avi Lewis's team. Now, anything of Avi Lewis that you support, or because of a lot of the mean spirited, because of a lot of the attacks, the smears, the slanders, uh, just like under like that principle, you just can't see yourself, or and many of your other comrades just can't see yourself supporting, you know, Avi, but unless whatever the situation brings. I'm curious your response.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like, you know, Avi says some of the right things a lot of the time. Just recently, you know, he denounced the US invasion of Venezuela and kidnapping, and you know, that's really important. He had an event on militarism and climate change, so kind of making those connections there. So you know, I support these topics to be discussed about, and you know, this you know, bringing more awareness to these issues. Um, I don't think personally I could support Avi because I don't actually trust that he would follow through on these policies. I think from what I've heard about like the past and with what I see now, he's just not a trustworthy person in my opinion. And you know, I think his role, thinking about Avi a little bit more meta, is he's kind of like an AOC where he's really taking this radical energy and he's going to funnel it into a campaign that is going to do nothing in the end. It's going to be very compatible. You know, he's trying to reform capitalism. He's not trying to disrupt it. You know, his public option, um, his big thing is like a public option for like service providers, grocery stores. But I don't understand like how that would actually work because if you're actually providing a public option, then that market is gone, right? Like, so that means that if you're provide like it has to have restrictions on it. So maybe it's only for some communities. He hasn't outlined that. Or maybe it's like there's other restrictions only in some areas for some people. Like we don't know. But if he was actually proposing a public option, like it would be the public choice. Like it's the only thing that would be like people would choose because
Yeah.
it would be affordable. That's the whole point of it. So there's got to be like something there. And then there's a few things too, like one of his first interviews in the news. I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but the interviewer, the reporter, said back to him like, "Oh, so you're saying you're going to nationalize these corporations?" And he said, "No, no, 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 no." He was like, "No, no," no. And I was like, "Why are you so why are you so afraid to say that? You know, like why are you?" So he's very much positioning himself as like the compatible candidate. He doesn't want to disrupt. He doesn't want to seem like a threat, but you have to seem like a threat to capitalism. Like you are a threat. You know, like you're not going to get anything done if you're not. So I don't really understand the point of his campaign to just be compatible, but like say these radical things and these radical policies. But unless if you're willing to fight, you're not going to get them. So I think he's just a waste of a lot of important energy and votes, to be honest.
Interesting. And what's your response to many voices? I guess you could call them Avi supporters or other supporters. Uh, yeah, your response to many voices who said Yves should have given his applications to be vetted way before December, and regardless of how much money he raised, he should have been vetted first before doing all the campaigning and letting his followers down. What would be your response to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one important aspect of that is that people think that he collected donations, financial donations against the rules. That's number one, not true. Like we've discussed it with Elections Canada. We have a financial agent. I've also seen a lot of people say we didn't have a financial agent. We do. Like we followed every single rule. If the NDP wanted somebody to apply before January 1st, they would have made the deadline December 1st or November 1st. You have until January 1st. So why is it an issue if we
Okay.
wait until November 3rd to submit? That's still almost 2 months in advance. And like, yeah, so that doesn't make sense. And then also with people saying like, oh, he should have done it because it was a bad strategy. There was about 1 week period where potentially we could have applied 1 week earlier, potentially, but we were not prepared. Like we had we had to do a huge educational campaign on vetting first of all to get our supporters, the volunteers, the general public aware of this issue of vetting in Canada, and that took time. Like we needed to have all the information about it, get speakers, get people interested, get people talking about it, get people signed on onto the campaign. Like we couldn't have done that webinar in the first week of launching the campaign and just ask everybody like, oh, hope they saw it, like we needed to do step by step until we could submit to vetting in order to hopefully pass it. So I think like at the most maybe we could have done it 4 days before because I was in the weekly meetings where every week we would decide, are we submitting now, are we submitting now, and there was like I don't know, 6 weeks straight of that where we were discussing, is it the time now? And it was a no, 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 no until like 1 week prior. And then we started thinking, okay, I think we've told enough people. I think we've garnered enough support. I think that we might be able to like submit. And then the next week it was, okay, let's make go. Like do it right now. So I really don't think that we needed to do everything.
And also in defense of Eve, I mean, uh, it's very expensive to run the campaign. The NDP was saying that you have to raise this amount of money to even be allowed to join. So there was that going on, and so where this whole grifter nonsense came from is just astounds me. And then what wasn't it just the other day like Abby Lewis was like saying like Tony Quayle and Tennille should be allowed to to be in the race. So there go my supporters. Make sure you donate a little bit to them so that they can still be allowed to be in the race. So okay, so Yves grifter for raising money and trying to fight to join the NDP leadership race, but these ones, no.
And one thing that I don't understand either is like people say that Eve is only doing this for the money. And it's actually been kind of frustrating how much money we're not spending. Because like I'm in the weekly meetings with the financial agent and like he will literally say like Eve like refuses to get an Uber, for example, in Halifax. And then he ended up getting lost because he like wanted to get to catch the bus or whatever. And then he ended up being late to like his talk. Like Eve, they do not spend money. Like the first like few weeks that I went to his house, I had like a sign up sheet to pick up the flyers and like the pamphlets and start handing everything out. The sign up sheet was literally like a children's coloring back of a page of a children's coloring book. Like I turned it around and there's like a like a drawing, an outline on the other side. I'm like, this is like genuinely working class, and you're saying that Eve is a grifter. Like he's like that we're not spending money in this campaign. Like we're spending money for like him to do like the campaign activities. But like, we're not hiring people. We're not getting paid. Like nobody, like the bare minimum is being spent on this campaign. It's actually incredible. So, and also like, I don't know. I just find like the accusations towards Eve to be so unfounded. It's like, okay, you don't even know who you're talking about. Like you could, everybody has faults. Just like say the right ones, Like why are you making up these ones that don't even make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, the last thing I'll say about that is is again, when we talk about the problems of the left and the very disappointing slash disturbing attacks that are coming from fellow leftists towards Eve is is the fact that yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it because like these voices, these are all the kind of people who say that the NDP needs to be more democratic and angry at the way Sarah Jama was treated, angry when such and such a person is barred from running for office, like the South Asian woman from that was running to be premier of BC. Uh, Anajai, and now these same voices are saying, "Well, Eve, well, the rules say this, and and Eve should have done this, and Eve should have done that." But it's like, well, Eve actually is trying to do all of that, but and now you guys are Anyways, it baffles the minds, but here we go. uh, just before I get to my last question, now, any events that you want to plug in case people in case people want to join the efforts to try to get Yves to become NDP leader and trying to get him to at least be part of this leadership race. Any events that you want to plug for us?
Socialist Action is holding an event on January 8th, I believe it is, on a Thursday that's upcoming. So there's like a webinar there. I'm not exactly sure who the speakers are, but I will be speaking at it, same with some members of the policy committee. And then by January 8th, or January 28th, if people sign up to the NDP, then you'll be able to vote come March for whoever our candidate will be.
All righty. Well, it's time to end the program, but we usually end the program with a first-time guest doing the questionnaire that was done first by Marcel Proust and later the late popular French broadcaster Bernard Pivot and later my hero, the late great James Lipton of Inside the Actors Studio. Jasmine, it's your turn to do this before we close. What is your favorite word?
Favorite word.
Yeah,
I don't know. I like when people say literature in French, littérature. I
yeah.
always like that. Sounds nice.
Okay. Then what's your least favorite word then?
Hmm. Least favorite word. What's yours?
But what's my least favorite word?
Yeah.
Oh, mine is money and family.
Okay. Issues, I'm assuming there. Least favorite word. Um, I don't know. Over the holidays, I was getting a little bit annoyed from hearing potty time because we were doing potty training. So I'm excited to not hear that anymore.
Okay. Then then what turns you on creatively, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically? What turns you on?
Mm, I definitely like hearing people's personal stories. I think it always helps me understand something better. So if there's like a memoir or, I like listening to like podcasts of people that I listen to. So that always makes it hit home a lot harder for me, whatever the issue is.
Interesting. And then what turns you off then?
Hmm. Probably arrogance, I guess.
Okay. And then oh yeah, yeah. What's your favorite curse word?
Well, I'm in Quebec, so tabernacle, I guess.
Actually, what does that mean actually? Tabernacle?
Like fuck.
Okay. And is that must be a uniquely Quebec French word? Because I don't believe I've ever heard that in yeah, yeah, the French I'm used to. So
It's 100% Quebecois. Yeah.
okay, fantastic. Then what sound or noise do you love?
Hmm. I love hearing my cat eat ice. It's like super crunchy. He's like,
Okay, interesting. Then what sound or noise do you dislike?
um, I don't like hearing people fight.
All right, that is an interesting one. Then what profession, if you weren't doing yours, would you love to do?
I would love to be a writer. Yeah, like write a book or those sort of things.
Okay, then what profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances?
Hmm. That one. Probably like, I guess something manual labor. My dad works in construction and I've helped him quite a lot. And it's just the most miserable day of my life every time. Like, it's always in the rain, freezing cold, I'm soaking wet. Like, it's
Yeah,
hot.
yeah, I can imagine. Okay, and then lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say as you arrive at the pearly gates, or whatever is your vision of the afterlife? And even if you're an atheist, please do answer the question.
I don't know. I guess like like congrats on the revolution. I don't know.
All righty, okay. Well, we are joined on this edition of One Plus One, our All Things Canada edition, with Jasmine Peardon, who is a political science student at a university in Montreal. She's a leftist who is part of the campaign for Yves, again, the brilliant Canadian historian, media critic, NGO critic, anti-imperialist thinker and activist, as well as journalist and member of Canadian Foreign Policy Institute and Disruption Canada, who's a frequent guest and good friends of this show. Yves for NDPLeader.ca. People check, in case people are interested. Jasmine, all my best to you and your studies, and you also do give my best to the entire team, from Barry to Jason to Michael to Julius, Hans, and of course the outstanding and stupendous Bianca. And I hope that this will be the first of many conversations we have both on and off the air, and really hope that you guys are able to overturn the wrongful decision to block Yves from running. Uh, and I hope that you guys are able to, yeah, and I hope that Yves is able to join the race and be able to even advocate all these incredible policies that you were part of champion. So, Good night and good luck. And don't forget, folks, reminder to the audience, please share widely all of OnePlus content, past and present episodes, our playlists and whatnot, and share us across social media because sometimes Facebook blocks us from from sharing. Donate at PayPal. Get in touch with me at yurismatter@gmail.com if you want another form of payment. And all my best until then. And Jasmine, once again, all my best to the campaign team, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great.